Hi, everybody. Good evening. Thank you so much for joining me. 6 o'clock. I know many things are happening. So I'm very glad to be here this evening. My name is Jasmine. I work at Yale-NUS College, which is the first liberal arts and science college in Singapore. And it's the result of a great collaboration between Yale University, which you may know of, which is in Connecticut. Or more specifically, it's in New Haven in Connecticut. And our other university partner is National University of Singapore and US. So I've been at Yale-NUS College for many years now, and I really love the community there. What I'm going to try to do today is just share a little bit with you about our admissions process. And the title of this session is very, very special. It's telling your story in the application process. So I hope to take something like maybe 50 minutes to an hour of your time, and that's with questions, just to give you a sense of what the application is like, how you can approach the application, and how you can really inject your personal voice into that process. So I have a deck of slides prepared here, which I'm going to share now. Just give me a moment to get it up and running. Okay. Right. Right. Let me know if you can't see it. I think it should be working just fine. And what we can do, sorry, let me just get my notes up. What you want to do is to use the question and answer function if you can see it to ask me questions, but we'll also definitely have time for questions at the end of it. And I think there's a raise hand function that might work for you too. Okay, so this is the title of the presentation that I shared with you. It's telling your story in the application process. My name is Jasmine, and I work at Admissions and Financial Aid of Yale-NUS College. So I'm just going to dive very quickly into the application shape, and then I'll take you through a little bit of what to expect today. Oh, I realize I have a little bit of a technical error, so just please give me one moment to take my slides off and just solve this issue before I come back and continue. One moment, please. I apologize. I realized that I had two decks open, and I don't think this is quite the right one that I wanted to share with you. Just give me one moment, please. Okay, we're back. All right, so we're back. You can see my screen. Okay, so as I mentioned just now, I work at Yale-NUS College, which is a very small liberal arts and science college in Singapore. We have about 1,000 students on our campus, and each year we receive about 250 students. So it's a very small community, very tight-knit. I would say that we know most of our students on a first-name basis. And what I love about being on campus, and what you can see behind me, this virtual background, is actually a picture of the center of the campus. And what I love about it is, being able to finish the workday at about 5 or 6 o'clock and going out there and seeing students and faculty gathering on the lawn, walking their dogs and everything. And even now, in these very unusual times, it still has a wonderful vibe. There's still students on campus and activities that are going on, of course, with safe distancing measures all put in place. So anyway, diving into the application, we have 3 ways to apply to Yale-NUS. Now, if you're interested in Yale-NUS as a college, the first way to get to us is actually by going directly to our website and accessing our direct application, which you can find on the website. The second is if you're looking already at colleges in North America and you're using the common application, you can also apply to Yale-NUS by using the common application and starting the Yale-NUS member page or the supplement. The third way of applying to Yale-NUS College is by using the Yale College application. So you apply to Yale College in the US on the Common Application. And while you're completing the Yale College supplement, you'll be able to check a box that says, I wish to share my application with Yale-NUS. And we at Yale-NUS in Singapore will actually receive your application that you wrote to Yale College with all the material that you've sent in, and we will review it from there. The only thing that we don't receive is your standardized testing scores if you choose to send them, and you'll have to make a separate application to your testing service to have them sent over to Yale-NUS College. So that's very easily managed with the College Board or the ACT. All right. Next slide. So what we're going to do today is cover these things here. The first thing is we've just done an overview of the application, and I'll tell you a little bit more about the structure. Then we'll dive into the academics. Specifically, what do we ask from you as an applicant in the academic section? We'll look very briefly at standardized testing and how standardized testing has been impacted, obviously, by the pandemic. We'll look at the activities and the work history section, which is very relevant to students, where you can tell us about your extracurriculars or your part-time work or your internships. We'll look at the short answer questions, which is one of my favorite sections of the whole application because you can really express your personality and what you're about in these really short answers. And then we'll go a little bit into the personal essay section where I'll show you a couple of samples of I would say excerpts from essays that we thought were fairly successful, and then you'll be able to comment a little bit on what you see there. The last couple of things are that one, I'll talk a little bit about letters of recommendation and what we're looking for in those letters, and then we'll definitely have time for questions and answers. All right, so that covers a little bit of what we're going to do today, and I'll dive straight in. All right, so at Yale-NUS College, we're very much focused and committed to a holistic admissions process. And what we mean by that is to say that a student comes to us and we are looking at all kinds of aspects of the student, right? So we're looking at not just your academics, right? It's one thing that people are very concerned about, but we're concerned about who you are as an individual, how you would fit into a campus like ours, what makes you thrive, what subjects do you love, what activities excite you. We want to know what your friends think about you. We want to know what you're like in a classroom to really, in order to get a sense of whether or not you could be somebody who would really enjoy our campus and all its opportunities that we make available. So within the application, what you're expected to do is first, of course, fill out the application form, as I mentioned. We ask within the application that you fill in a couple of essays, which are typically not academic in nature. We ask for at least 2 letters of recommendation from a teacher that has taught you, so 2 academic subject teachers. And then lastly, if you're invited to an interview, you attend an online interview with us. Typically it'd be on Zoom, and it's a very short, pretty casual interview, either with a staff member from the admissions office or actually one of our admissions fellows. So I understand that a couple of weeks ago, you might have met one of our current students called Vlad, right? And he's also from Kazakhstan, and I think he gave a wonderful session with you all. So you would have got a sense of what Yale-NUS is like, and I hope they left a pretty appealing impression. So going straight into the academics of what we're looking for at the college. Now, Yale-NUS College, as I mentioned, is a small college. It's academically very rigorous in its undergraduate program. Our students apply to us pretty much undecided, so you don't have to declare a major at the point that you apply to the college, and you only need to declare your major in the second year when you actually have completed the first and second year, and then you declare your major, because all our students enroll and take what we call the common curriculum in the first year, and that gives them a great foundation to then choose from any of the 14 majors that we offer. So what does that mean for you as a student when you're applying? So when you're applying to us in this process, what it means is that you are very much free to apply regardless of your academic background. There is no specific kind of subject combination or diploma or grade that we're looking for. We accept state, national, and international curriculums. And what you want to do when you're applying is to make sure that you have the past 3 years of your transcripts, which also would include any final or predicted scores. Now, if your transcripts are not in English, that's not a problem at all. You can ask your school to provide an official translation. Now, I mentioned this point just now, and this is a very important point for us because of the way that we evaluate our applicants and how we run a very holistic admissions process, looking at all these different aspects of an applicant. It also means that we don't have a specific grade or academic cutoff or requirement that we're looking for. So it means that we don't line up all our applicants in a row and then decide, okay, we want this number of students. That's not what happens at all. And we review every application that comes to us before we make an admissions decision. I also mentioned just now that students apply undeclared if they want. You don't have to tell us what major you want to read, and there are no specific grades required for specific majors, and you don't have to have studied a particular kind of subject combination in order to qualify for a particular major. The only tip I would give you here is that if you're uploading your transcripts from the past 3 years or 4 years, you should upload them in a chronological order to ensure that it is easy for us to read and decipher. Right, the second thing I want to touch on really quickly is testing. Now, 2020 has been a very unusual year for all of us, a very challenging year for schools. And this is why at Yale-NUS, we've decided, like many other institutions, to go test optional for admission cycle 2020 to 21. So what that means is that if you're applying now, potentially to matriculate or to enroll at Yale-NUS College in August 2021, it means that you do not have to provide a standardized testing score. So you don't have to give us an SAT score or an ACT score. But if you have a score because you managed to take the test, you are more than welcome to upload the score. And if you don't have the score, that's perfectly fine and you will not be disadvantaged. Now, if you want to take an English proficiency test, because maybe some of you might not be enrolled at a school which it teaches predominantly or primarily in English, you can do so. We accept a range of tests from the TOEFL, the IELTS, and also now the Duolingo English test, which is very easily accessible online. Right. So quickly on to the activities and work history section. So the activities and work history section are one of my favorite sections. I think the short answer is probably my most favorite one. But the activities one, I think, is something that students can really learn to expand on in a very clever way to tell us a little bit more about their accomplishments. And what I want to do now is to give you some examples to help you navigate that. So in the activities and work history section, what we're asking for is, I would say, these 5 things, right? One is that we're asking you to tell us what are the organizations that you participated in, that you worked with, that you volunteered with. We want to know the role. So what role specifically did you do with that organization or that student activities group? We want to know, generally speaking, when you did this. So what month, what year, to tell us when you did this in school, so that we have an idea of the timeline and the context in which you were doing this. You have a little bit of space to tell us about the activity. It's about 150 characters, and you can tell us, or you can list up to 10 activities and work history, things that you've done in the last few years. We encourage you to list them, and this is important. So you list them in the order of importance as they are for you. You don't have to list the activity or the work experience that is most recent, but you should list the activity or work experience that for you was the most impactful or that you felt, left an impression on you. Now, some of the students I've met in an application list, for example, basketball as their most important activity or debating. And I've also seen students list their first activity as an internship that they did. Some of them list an activity as, say, taking care of my siblings because they're primary carer for their siblings at home. And that is their first and most important activity. And all these examples are equally valid and important to us as an admissions office. Right? So just think a little bit about it carefully and decide which activity is most important to you. Right. The last thing we ask you to do here is to spell out acronyms. So for example, if you're part of the MICE club, like MICE, and it's actually the mathematics, and calculations and exploration club. Tell us what it means rather than just saying mice club. So that will help us understand what you've been doing for the few years that you're in high school. So I have a little activity here for you to try to understand how to make use or use the section more effectively. And I encourage you to take a screenshot or write this down on a notebook if you've got one with you, or write it down on a Google Doc. So in the activity and work history section, so you've got 10 spaces typically to list an activity or work experience, and you have about 150 characters to do this. So what I would recommend that you do is to break it down into 3 to 5 parts to think about the activity that you've done, the kind of problems that you solved, and what kind of impact you had or what kind of lessons you learned. So this 5 tables here. So you think of, say, for example, if you did or you played basketball. Basketball is your activity. What you want to do is to describe it and break it down into different sections. Okay, so we'll change the activity, maybe not basketball, football. Okay, football is cool. So let's just say that this student here, right, served as the vice captain on the school football team. So that's the first thing, the first column that I filled out there. And then there was this problem, which the student identified, said, I realized that there was some difficulty in sharing ideas and thoughts with the football team. And what I learned from this is I learned how to be patient while talking to my team members. And in doing so, I encouraged 5 new students to try out for the team, and they didn't have any prior experience. And how I applied what I learned is that these were great lessons in leadership that helped me manage members in another club eventually when I went on to do something else, or I tried a different activity. So what we recommend is, instead of, I guess, just listing the activities that you've accomplished in the last 3 or 4 years of high school, what you could do is actually use this very opportune time to reflect on your experience and use this, I guess, this table to help you break it down, right? To analyze the challenges that you've actually faced, the kinds of skills that you've learned, or the lessons that you learned from it, and how maybe you applied some of these lessons in a different situation. Okay, so I'm just going to leave that up there for a quick second. Just going to look at some of the questions. All right. I hope everybody can hear me just fine. I saw one comment where somebody could not hear me, but it seems to be going okay. I'm sure you'll stop me if there are any technical issues. All right, so next slide. So that's the activity section. I'll give you a few minutes maybe to think about that and how you can apply it to your own activities. Now, diving into the short answer question. So a lot of colleges, including Yale-NUS College, have a short answer question section. It's typically a series of questions, or maybe 3 or 4 questions, which would encourage you to write a response, which is like 250 words or about there. I would say that having read many applications in the last 10 years, I find that students put a lot of emphasis in preparing their long essays, but not so much in the short answer questions. But the short answer questions are extremely important. They help the admissions office and people like myself who read thousands of applications in any cycle really understand aspects of a student's personality, interests, and quirks. They really help us to build a more dynamic picture of who a student is, and how they approach different situations. And more importantly, because a lot of these short questions are about, I think, about the school or the college that you're applying to, it actually helps the admissions office understand how this student is a good fit, right, for this college. It helps us to really draw the dots between the student and that college and find that connection. So our main recommendation here in the last point on this slide is that if you're approaching that short answer question, which is really just a couple of 100 words, please don't copy just what you've read on our prospectus or on our website. Do make an effort to think of a response and edit it in order to come up with something that that really speaks about you and communicates who you are as an individual. Now, the very, very short questions, and Yale-NUS has them, is called the quick takes. This section is called the quick takes. And these are very short questions, and they typically are limited to about 30 words or fewer in terms of the response. And they're called quick takes for a reason. Don't overthink it, but have fun in this section. So in this section, this is a great opportunity, a fun opportunity for you to show us your quirks and your personal voice. We have a quick take, which starts off as a kind of like a half sentence. It says, my friends would be surprised to know that I, and it just trails off an ellipsis, ... So my friends would be surprised to know that I, right? And we want you to fill in the rest of the question, right? And you'll be surprised to see, I guess, what kinds of responses we get. Right, so maybe this is a moment for you as an audience to maybe just participate so that also I don't feel so alone here. I know you're here with me. What I would encourage you to do now is to take a moment and maybe if you feel brave enough, you can maybe type in a response, and maybe you can do it anonymously even to the end of the question. So I'm going to type it out here. My friends would be surprised to know that I, right? So that's the question. Anyone like to try and maybe fill in the second half of the question? And what's really important is to think of something you want to share that would be appealing to the reader, something quirky, something funny, something to show that, you know, you're a big reader, maybe, to something that shows you're incredibly athletic, you know, or a go-getter, adventurous. Anyone? I'm going to just give you a minute. I know people can be a little bit quiet sometimes on the chat function. But I'll get the ball rolling. I'll start the ball rolling. So I have some examples here. So I'm going to type it into the chat function. You can read it. So I've seen examples of students who type things like, my friends would be surprised to know that gone to my dream school. My friends would be surprised to know that I did not stop to pet the cat. I can relate. I stop and say hi to every cat that I meet. I like this one, which I read sometime recently, which is like, my friends would be surprised to know that I read the labels on every shampoo bottle. Oh, my friends would be surprised to know that I started using TikTok. Oh, my friends would be surprised to know that I was accepted by Yale-NUS College. Oh, that's sweet. Someone said privately, my friends would be surprised to know that I read 30 books this year. Well, that's cool. That's a good one. That's a good one. So if you want to reply to me, but you don't want to put your name out there, you can do so privately and I'll read it out, and that's fine as well. Yeah. So you can use the private function. Someone said here, my friends would be surprised to know that I was raised by my grandparents. Okay, that's something that, you know, maybe people would not know, and it'd be good for you to share in a short answer question like this, a quick take, and also to elucidate elsewhere in your application, right? Someone says here, my friends would be surprised to know that I can cook very well. That's a good one. Or you can tell us what your favorite or your best dish is when you do that. All right. Thank you for your responses. This is fun for me. This is very helpful. And the person who can beatbox will ask you to do a demonstration for us later. All right, so you get the idea of what the quick takes can do for you. They can show you a quirky side of your personality, an aspect of your personal voice that's not available elsewhere in the application. All right, so there's another question here. We should try a different one here. So the question is, what challenges you? What challenges you? Right, and I encourage you to type answers to me. You can use the private function, as I said, the private function, and I can read out some of these answers, or you can share your answers with everybody. So what challenges you? And remember that the response that you're giving is something that you want the admissions office of the college that you're applying to know about you. So ideally, it would not be something shocking or terrible. It would be something appealing. Right, so I've got some answers here. Some people say competition with my peers. Oh, someone says, this is a good one. I'm challenged by singing. Someone else says, indecision with my inner voice. This is a very relatable one. Speaking in a foreign language for the first time. Right, that's definitely challenging. And definitely life itself is full of problem solving. Thank you for your responses. So you're getting the idea of this is what you want to use the short answer questions for to, round out your application in different ways. All right. So moving on a little bit to the longer writing section. So in the common application this year, and this is also true for the Yale-NUS application, you'll find that there's a new, what we call the community disruption section, which basically allows you and your school teachers to tell us a little bit about how the global situation, and this pandemic have impacted you and how you've experienced it. So there, you are able to tell us about this experience in a specific section in the application, and your guidance counselor and your teacher will also be able to share a little bit more about COVID-19 in their recommendation letters and their school reports and so on. So there are different ways for you to add on different and other information about yourself. So think through all these sections, go through the application carefully before you decide what you're going to read or write about, sorry. So diving straight into the personal essay section. Now, the personal essay section is talked a lot about, I think, in many sessions like this one, and if you Google it, you'll see lots of different, kinds of advice on the internet. So what I'm going to share with you this evening is just one institution's perspective, right? There are lots of different ways to approach the personal essay, and the examples I'm going to show you are just one example out of thousands and thousands of essays that we can encounter, and examples that you can probably find on the internet as well. So these are three common application essay prompts that are available to students in this admission cycle. I'm going to leave it up on screen for a couple of minutes so that you can read through them. So the first one is, some students have a background, identity, interest, or talent so meaningful, they believe the application would be incomplete without it. If this sounds like you, please share your story. Second prompt. The lessons that we take from obstacles we encounter can be fundamental to later success. Recount a time when you faced a challenge, setback, or failure. How did it affect you, and what did you learn from the experience? The third one. Discuss an accomplishment, event, or realization that sparked a period of personal growth and a new understanding of yourself or others, right? So three questions here. One is about, an aspect of your experience, your background that is really important to you. The second is about a time that you faced a challenge. And the third is about maybe an accomplishment or a realization, right, that sparked some kind of growth of understanding. Do we see any commonalities between these three prompts? Any commonalities? What do you see in common here? If you like, again, like typing privately to me, that's good. Right, someone says, showing your personality. Others say personal growth, own experience. Oh, this is also a very insightful one. Someone says you should reveal yourself through this. All right, this is all about the student. You're really reflecting on a personal experience. And these are all extremely accurate. These are really on point. At the end of the application, right, what the admissions office is trying to determine is who you are, because they want to meet you through the application. Because they may not have the opportunity to meet you in person or an interview, but the application is a way for you to present your voice and your experience to the admissions office. So regardless of the prompt, right? You all right. All these individuals who have responded to me in the chat function. Ultimately, the most important thing that you're trying to do in this application is to tell them who you are, right? About your personal experience and things that have happened that are important, impactful in your life, and things that you have reflected on, right? And what kinds of realizations came out of it. So this slide that I move on to, these are the essay prompts that we have on the Yale-NUS application. So a little bit different in the phrasing, but I would say not dissimilar in the purpose. So the first question here is, describe an interaction or conversation you have had with someone different in any way than yourself. Discuss what you took away from this experience. The second question is, describe a time in your life when your perspective on an issue of importance was fundamentally altered. What contributed to your change of perspective? The third one is, reflect on a time that you tried something new, right? And that could be like everything or anything that's new. It could be you tried different food today. It could be you tried a different subject. You tried a different sport. You took a different route home from school. Anything like that. And as some of you have reflected in the chat function, it is true. You're looking for a reflection on an event, a thing in your life that occurred to you. And yes, you should show connection between your personality and your values, and I guess who you are, and hopefully the admissions officer or office reading your essays will also be able to tell, right, whether or not you would be someone who would really thrive at the campus that they work at. So three, I guess, tips here about the essay, the do's and don'ts of the essay before we go to some examples. So do start early. So for many people, the application is something that can be a little bit scary, a little bit daunting. And we recommend that you give yourself quite a few weeks to get through the whole application. There are lots of different sections, different parts and information that you need to put together. So do start early, give yourself quite a few weeks to get through it. And with the essay, make sure you read the essay prompt a few times and get a sense of what it's really trying to, I guess, get out of you and how you want to respond to it meaningfully. Some of the don'ts are, number one, don't tell us what you think we want to hear. Right, just tell us who you are and tell us your story. Try not to use too many words when you can use fewer words. So edit your essay before you send it off. And the last thing is really don't ignore the word limit. Typically, the common application essay is about 650 words or so. Don't go above that. So this is a very important tip here in orange at the bottom. It says here, we are admitting you, not your grandma, music teacher, a stranger on the train or anything like that. So and the reason why we say this is because a lot of students write us essays about somebody who was very important to them in their life. And we read the essay and we end up thinking, wow, this person, this basketball coach or their grandmother sounds really awesome. But the thing is that we want to meet the student. So we want to meet you, the applicant, and not so much your basketball coach or your grandmother, although they may be very lovely people. So insofar as you're writing about somebody else who has had an impact in your life, remember that at the end of the day, the essay should communicate who you are and your story and your reflections and experience. All right, just a little bit, maybe a bit of a pointer here. So some students ask us, what is the difference between the personal statement that they're writing for some universities, say in the United Kingdom, versus what is a personal essay like in the common application? And I think what we're trying to encourage students to do is to really read the prompt and to understand what the university or the college is looking for in their response. So for example, in the UCAS application, typically a student is asked to reflect on or to explain the kinds of academic experiences that put them in good stead to pursue a specific major or course that they're applying to at a college, right? So the question is here on the screen. UCAS asks that you write a statement that supports your application to study at a university of college. And it's very specific to your motivations, why you want to study a particular course or subject, what skills and experience you have that show your passion for this particular field, which is a very different thing from what you've just seen in the last two slides about reflecting on a time that you tried something new. Tell us about, a particular experience that profoundly changed your life and how you perceive something. So one is very, very personal, right, and, about you and your story. And the second is very strongly, I would say, specifically academic and why you're well suited to read a particular subject. So it's very important to read the prompt very carefully. Okay. There's a great question here, and I'll tackle this later about who you want to be and how do you know what kind of story you want to tell, and I'll come to that later. So these are the questions, just to kind of like refresh your memory of what we've been discussing. Okay, so I have a very short activity here, so I can take a break from talking at you. So a great way to start thinking about what you want to write about, if you have a sense of which prompt is interesting to you to think about, actually, is these 10 questions. You can take a screenshot, you can write them down if you want. I won't go through all of them, but it's really a good way to an exercise to sit down maybe with a friend, or a guidance counselor or a teacher to talk about these things, so you can, just jog or stir up those creative juices a little bit. So the first brainstorm question is, what's something that reminds you of home? Number 3, what's something really nerdy or geeky that you love? I like 4, what's your actual superpower? What are you really good at? 7, what's your favorite photo? 9, are you known for something among your friends? And 10, what's an object that represents a secret or something not a lot of people know about you? All right, so these are some of the things that you can just start thinking about to try and, think, okay, maybe there's some fun or interesting things about me that I could write about in my essay. And once you've come up with a list of 10 things about yourself, or 10 fun facts, for example, what we encourage you to do is, of these 10 facts or things, just take out 5 of them. Choose 5 that you think are particularly poignant to you or important. And then from the remaining 5, take away 3, right? And then you should have 2 left, and then pick 1, right? Something like that. So someone's sent me a private message to say that something that really reminds them, I guess, of their family would be my mom's cooking, or like arguing with my siblings, or on winter days when I'm trying to get home and feel the warmth of my home after a cold school day. So these are really tactile, important memories, and this can be a really good place for you to start your essay, something that is descriptive, something that is really important to you to help you begin that essay. So those are really great. Thank you for responding. So I've got a couple of excerpts here. I'm just going to be mindful of the time. It's now, I think it's 6:40 on your side, and I want to give us time for some questions. So I've got 2 sample and excerpts here. What I want you to do is read what you can see on the screen here, and tell me, what do you feel about this applicant? What are your impressions of this person? So this person begins their essay by saying, when I said yes to trying something new 6 years ago, I never would have thought I would be stumbling into one of the biggest loves of my life. I had never been on stage, save for the compulsory school productions as a toddler. Yet what started off as a one-off performance led to another and another. Soon, I was in love with dancing. Well, so a couple of people said, in the questions here, someone says it's a nice beginning, and someone says, is dancing important for that? Well, this person is probably not trying to apply for a dance degree, and definitely not at Yale-NUS because we don't have a dance degree. But that's a really great point, right? That the student has chosen to write an essay about the time that they tried something new, which is dancing. And this student is writing about overcoming, I guess, this challenge of trying something that they were probably not very good at and had to try very hard at to get better at. And this really turned into a great passion for this individual. And this student writes, this became a source of strength and comfort. So it was a transformative experience for this individual. And someone just wrote me a message and said, this is a really cool parallel, right, between your hobby and an actual romantic relationship. It is, that's true. And someone says, this person shows really courage and tenacity. Someone says, this person is open to new things and clearly shows their passion. All of the above are applicable and true just by reading this short excerpt. And I'm going to go back to a really important question at the start here. Someone said, is this person applying to dance, a dance major? And the answer is probably no, because we don't offer a dance major at Yale-NUS. But what is important about this essay is that the student is writing us a piece that tells us all these things about them, right? They are passionate, they are tenacious, they are courageous, they love dance. And we like the way they write. So the essay is not just a way for us to, get a sense of what the individual is like, maybe outside of the classroom or outside of school, but also a way for us to tell, what would they be like maybe if they came to a new place and had new opportunities, different things to try, right? And this tells us quite a lot about this individual, and it's just 2 paragraphs. So remember that when you're approaching the personal essay, as I mentioned, it doesn't have to be academic in nature. You want to find something that really tries to communicate who you are, all right? Rather than trying to convince an admissions officer that you will be really good at, say, reading economics, for example. Just focus on you and communicate who you are and what you're about. I've got a different one here. So I'll give you a couple of minutes to read it. So I take a sip of water. So this person picked up table tennis. This person says, I learned principles and skills such as teamwork, perseverance, leadership, and expressing appreciation through the sport. And talks about athletics, stamina, the challenges of playing the sport, and how you have to work to stay cool-headed and not get frustrated. And they round off by saying, table tennis has played a key role in developing me holistically and making me a better student. Ultimately, I believe these skills and principles will help me with the social and academic challenges of university. All right, so someone says, yeah, this person is just okay, facts. Someone says it's cliche. Maybe, maybe. But whether or not we think this essay is, I guess a compelling essay, right? What do we see here, right? What is the I guess the point? It's another excerpt to show you that it's about you being able to communicate experiences and how you reflected on them. So some of you have sent me a message to say, this person is expressing how they overcame a difficulty. Right? They didn't want to give up. They tried something a few years ago and they worked really hard at it, and it helped them grow and develop into somebody quite different. Somebody says here in the messages to me, this individual describes what is happening, but they could do a better job of actually showing it. Also true, right? So between the first sample and the second sample, you probably have a preference. I'm not going to ask you to choose, but this is a good point, that what you want to do is make an effort, I guess, to find an activity or a thing that has happened in your life, in your experience in the last few years, and make it relevant to you. Do something that is impactful and important and really show it to us, right? Spend a little less time describing, I guess, what happened, but really try to draw a connection between you, the experience, and what you learned from it. Okay. Thank you everyone who are participating on the chat function. It really helps me feel energized. So moving very quickly on, I guess, the teacher recommendation section, so that we'll have a little bit of time for questions. What's in a letter of recommendation from a teacher? So in our application, we ask for students to submit 2 letters of recommendation to us from a teacher that has taught them in an academic subject. And then typically, if you're using the common application as well, we would ask you to have a recommendation letter from a school counselor or school official who can also send us your transcripts and your official school report. So if you have other letters of support from a sports coach, for example, or an internship supervisor, or somebody who mentored you in a laboratory, you can also do so and have those sent to us. And those are supplementary letters of support that you can include in the application. So what's really important to us is that we get the letters of support from the teachers who have taught you an academic subject. That's important to us because ultimately we're trying to understand what you're like in a classroom situation, what you might be like in a seminar, because Yale-NUS is very seminar driven. We have very small classes. We want to understand what you'd be like in a small seminar situation with other students, and what your potential is to succeed in such a rigorous and small classroom. So some tips here. When you're looking at your letters of recommendation, please ask for them early. Don't presuming your teacher is willing or able to write you a letter in a hurry. Please be nice and ask them. Don't be afraid to approach a teacher who's taught you a subject that you weren't particularly good at. I find that students often try to ask for letters from teachers who have taught them subjects in which they are already very good. So they have very good academic results. But this is not to say that that is the only way to go. We would say that you shouldn't be afraid to ask for a letter of recommendation from a teacher who knows that, for example, you've tried really hard as a subject that you just haven't done as well as by comparison to other subjects. And that's perfectly fine as well. Someone asked me a question here. It says, if I don't have a school counselor in my school, that's fine. Usually you can get any other school official or your head teacher or your form teacher to help you with submitting the school report. Or if you have a question about that, feel free to write to us at our admissions at Yale-NUS email address, and we'll help you out with that. Someone asked here, can we get a recommendation from an employer for a paid job? Yes, you can. And what you want to do with that letter or recommendation is that it's going to go into your application as a supplementary letter rather than one of the two academic references that we ask of you. All right, so I'll repeat. You need 2 letters of recommendation from a teacher who's taught you an academic subject, and typically you'd have a 3rd recommendation letter from a counselor or a school official. And then if you have letters of recommendation from other persons like a sports coach or someone who supervised you at a job, you can have those letters go in as additional letters of support. Okay. If your teacher has challenges with writing the recommendation letter, don't worry about the length of it. And if you need help, please again, email us and we'll try to walk you through the process of how to help you fill out the application and get all the documents that you need. All right, so the last thing here, oh, someone says the video is kind of glitchy. Well, I hope you can access the recording after. It could just be the internet cracking up a little bit. So remember that we read through every application that we receive in the admissions cycle. We don't have any particular grades that we require or cutoffs. And we really want to understand every single student that we meet in this process. Now, finally, before we call it a day, I'm just going to talk very briefly about the financial support that we are able to afford students at Yale-NUS College. So in summary, we have different kinds of ways for students to afford education at Yale-NUS. The most applicable one, I think, for international students coming from outside of Singapore is the study award. So we do offer need-based financial aid to international students. You apply for financial aid pretty much from the point that you submit your application. So if you submit your application, your admissions application, you should receive an invitation to apply for financial aid within a couple of days after that. And then you have a specific time frame, typically about 14 days, to submit your financial aid application. There's also what we call the tuition grant, which is basically a Singapore government driven scheme to support international students to study in Singapore, and it's common to all the public universities in Singapore. I encourage you to go to our website to find out more about the tuition grant. So the study awards, which is the need-based financial aid, and the tuition grant. Last couple of things here, which I'll talk about really briefly. One is the merit scholarships. So we do offer merit scholarships for students. The nice thing about merit scholarships is that you don't have to apply for merit scholarships. You just need to submit your admissions application, and then students are then all evaluated for their suitability for merit scholarship through the admissions application. The things that you need to apply for, first and foremost, most importantly, is for the need-based study award, and you'll be able to access the financial aid application within a couple of days of you submitting your admissions application. All right, so I hope that helps a little bit. Someone asked me, do we apply to all scholarships through one form? So just to highlight again, the merit scholarships don't have or any particular form that you need to fill out. The form that you need to fill out typically for an applicant early on in the process is the application for need-based study awards. And the application is available to you within a couple of days of you submitting your admissions application. More information is available on our website, specifically on the financial aid page. Okay. So this is one of my wonderful colleagues, Rebecca. She's interviewing an applicant here. So as I mentioned early on, that a certain number of our applicants will be invited to an interview. It's fairly casual, about 20, 25 minutes, and is conducted online, either with a staff member from my office or one of our student interviewers who are trained to conduct interviews. So it's a really fun part of the process. Many students are nervous about interviews, but I assure you that the Yale-NUS interview is not scary at all. And in fact, it's a really great way for you to come and learn about Yale-NUS, can ask questions about Yale-NUS, and you can get one of our current students to actually share more about their personal experience with you. Oh, there's an important point that's actually being made here. That remember that if you're submitting things in translation, that you can engage a notary to do that, or ask a teacher of English to do that rather than you doing the translation yourself. Someone's asked a question here, do we need to fill in a CSS profile? It's a good question. So Yale-NUS College operates, because we operate outside of North America and we're in Singapore, we have our own financial aid application process, and we don't use the CSS profile. Our application process for financial aid actually is quite accessible. It's quite simple. You just need tax documentation, and you can upload it directly to our portal. So you can read more about the supporting documents that are required on our website when we don't require the CSS profile. All right, someone needs to go off early. Thank you very much for joining me. Someone else comments here, can we request to have an interview before applying to Yale-NUS? So some colleges in the US allow you to do that. That's not possible at Yale-NUS. So what happens is that you need to apply to us in the typical admissions process. And after you've submitted your application, you might be then invited to an interview with one of our staff members or a student interviewer. Okay, so just wrapping up here, remember that the interview is an opportunity for us as a college to learn more about you as a person and to dive deeper, I guess, into your application and to understand what kind of fit you have for the college. It's also a very important way for you to learn more about Yale-NUS if you have any questions. Right, so we've talked a little bit about Yale-NUS today. I've shared a little bit about the application. Now, if you're interested to apply, you can follow this link here. We've got 2 rounds of application every cycle. Round 1 closes in January, so that's January 15th, 2021. And then round 2 closes March 20th of 2021. And as I mentioned, the financial aid application will be available to you shortly after you submit your application, your admissions application, and then you can fill that out. And you'll hear from us by these stipulated times here. So you can use these dates to plan out your timeline and figure out what works best for you in your college journey. All right, so it's just going 7 o'clock on your end. I want to give you about 10 to 15 minutes to ask questions. It will probably be a little bit easier for me if you don't mind, because there's quite a lot of you in the room. What I would encourage you to do is actually to type your questions into the chat function.
We have only chat function.
Sure, we'll use the, yeah. Okay, I'll just stop the share here. You can just continue using the chat, and you can send me a message privately.
So I think like one of the questions is, can we apply to round 2 if we didn't make it through round 1?
Ah, okay. That's a very good question. Actually, I'll share the slide, put that up again so that everybody can see it. So I should have covered this earlier. So we've got 2 rounds of application, as I said, January and March. So a student may only apply once in the admissions cycle. So if you apply in round 1 and you receive your admissions decision by April 1st, and you are not successful, right, you will not be able to apply in round 2. So you can only apply once in the cycle.
And they have some really good questions about like majors and declaring majors. Can you just repeat when students actually declare major?
Sure. It's a great point. So as I said, students can indicate what majors they are interested in, but we don't hold them to it, and they can also apply undeclared. All our students take a common curriculum in the first year when they're enrolled at Yale-NUS College, and then they would typically declare their major sometime late in the second year. It's usually, I would say, about March or April of the second year. It's quite late in the second year.
Yeah. And people are asking how much one semester costs.
Or how much?
Yeah, and maybe just a bit more about financial support.
Sure. I don't have the accurate numbers in conversion here. What I could probably do is I would encourage them to go to the website. We have a good currency converter as well to give them an accurate figure. What I need to share about the financial support is to understand that Yale-NUS College is able to offer comprehensive financial aid to a selected number of international students. So a student who applies to Yale-NUS College, right, and is successful in the process, would typically then have their demonstrated financial need met by our financial aid office.
And this is a great question. Can you tell us about the possibility of
Research
in your college? And maybe you can tell about your relationship in the US.
Sure, I can. So 2 parts of the question. One is the possibility of research at Yale-NUS and the relationship to Yale. So actually, maybe I'll talk a little bit about Yale first, because that's the parent university and it leads into the research question. So for students who are applying to us, students who apply to us, I think I will be able to understand that I think Yale and NUS have come together to form a very dynamic partnership, right, in this college. Students will be able to experience basically the support of a small liberal arts and science college. Yale, pretty much in every way, and once as one of our parent universities, I think is the inspiration for our curriculum and the student experience. Every year, right before this pandemic, we would have faculty who would come from Yale and teach summer classes for our students. Many of our students are also able to do exchange programs at Yale University. Yale University is not the only school, obviously, that they are able to do an exchange with, but there are many programs that are open to our students there. We also have a couple of special programs leading into a master's with Yale. One of them is the program with the Yale School of Forestry. So there are different programs that are available, and students often, I would say, from Yale and US go to Yale for exchange programs and come back. Now, as to the question about research, research is a very critical component of the education for students at Yale and US because it's a very small college, and our faculty are immediately and constantly engaged in their research. So we don't have any teaching assistants, and the faculty teach all of their own classes. So it is possible for a student to get involved in research, and I say research broadly across the sciences, humanities, and social sciences from as early as the freshman year. So I have known students who've gone to work in labs with current faculty, looking at things like the effect of aging on nematode work, problems. I've known students to go out into the field and help professors with collating data on urban migration in Southeast Asia. I've known students to work on translation, for example, and some of our students have also gone to even co-publish papers with their faculty. So to answer the question, in short, it is possible for students to engage in a very high level of research directly with their faculty at Yale-NUS.
That's great. And one student is asking, is it possible to get an application fee waiver? So this person is probably planning to apply. Shall they apply through Common App?
So if you apply via the Common App or if you apply via our direct application, the fee is the same. It's $10 US, which is, I think, considerably more accessible than other schools. But yes, it's possible for you to do so. And there's basically a little box for you to explain that on, and you can also write directly to us if you are having trouble with the application fee. No problem.
What kind of students are interested in like college life? So what kind of traditions do you have there? And
what kind of traditions? I love this question, and I'm laughing because Yale-NUS is quite a young institution. So we were really founded in 2011, and we've enrolled, I think it's 8 classes of students now, and graduated about half of those. So I think the traditions, it's really a space for students to find and create new traditions of their own. I do think we have a really nice culture. I do love some of the like for example, I think with the first year assembly, I think there's some great orientation traditions that they have every year. Those are the things I like the candlelight vigil, for example. So what I would encourage you to do is actually go on YouTube. We have an excellent YouTube channel with some day in the life of videos there. I think the heart maybe of Yale-NUS, and this links to a question I see here about which is your favorite part about the college, is this great culture that we have of gathering and eating together, and having a generally great time. Singapore is a great place for people to rejoice over food and multicultural, I guess, experiences through food. So that's very, very central to the student experience at Yale-NUS.
Here's a question about interviews. A student is asking if you ask questions related to the major. So it's like, do you test my background in my major?
No, that's a really, really good question. And the answer is no, we don't. Because so the interviewers, as I mentioned, are either staff interviewers or current students. So it's usually very random. So if you're interested in history or if you're interested in physics, it doesn't mean that you'll meet somebody with the same academic interest as you or the background. So in the interview, what we're really looking for is to understand you as an individual, your personality. We might ask you a question or two about, for example, what is your favorite class, or what kind of books do you enjoy reading? Is there kind of research that you enjoy doing? But it will not be an academic test about your major. No. It's a good question.
Yeah, it's a good question. And usually universities in Asia, they have that tendency about like asking like
Yes.
major related questions.
Yes.
This is a good question. Student is applying to Yale, probably through Common App. So should they fill Yale and US application too? Or it's just they fill out one application and maybe some extra questions for Yale and US?
This is a really, really good question about application and I guess demonstrating your college fit. So I'm going to give you the long answer to this. So if a student is applying to Yale and they're also interested in Yale and US, they can definitely fill in the Yale application and then check the box that says, I want to share my application with Yale and US. And then I think shortly after submitting the application, they should get an email, like a prompt that says, hi, we've noticed you shared your application to Yale and US, and we have an additional essay. It's a very short essay of about 250 words for them to explain why they are also interested in Yale and US. And it is, we strongly recommend that you fill this out to help you further elucidate why you are a good fit for Yale and US. So you can definitely apply in that way. And between the three types of application, we don't have a demonstrated preference for any of the application. And if you share your application via Yale, that will not disadvantage you.
Okay, so again, we have questions about financial aid. Can they get kind of like funding for full tuition? And can financial aid programs provide access to campus housing?
So the answer is some student. Okay, so as I mentioned, so we are able to offer some financial aid to selected international students, and yes, it is possible in some students' cases if they demonstrate a specific amount of need and they are also admitted to the college, then we may be able to support them very comprehensively and cover a lot of their tuition. The cost of attendance and their tuition is also, and the financial aid package is also taken into account. And for all our students, they live on campus, so we will try to make it as accessible as we can for them.
And I know that many international students find work on your campus. And
Yes, that's right.
I remember Vlad, he was hired just like several days after he came to Singapore.
Yes, yes. And he does a lot of great information sessions for us. He's wonderful. It is possible for students, yes, to work on campus. So for students who receive financial aid, they typically, have a little bit of the cost to pay, and they often try to support themselves by working on campus. And in Singapore, it's possible for international students to work outside of the campus as well. It's typically about 16 hours a week.
Yeah, which is great. And, so yeah, people are asking, is it possible to work off campus? Yes, it's
Yes.
well. Great question. Is it okay to be a little bit quirky when writing supplemental essays?
Oh, is it
It's
right?
Arakian, but
Oh, you know the Rakian brothers. Okay. Yeah, it's I think it's good to be quirky, and what I encourage students to do when they've done writing those essays is really get the essay read by a friend, to really see how they've come across, because I think sometimes we can mean to present a certain aspect of our personality and it can come across a little bit different. So it's good to be quirky, and it's all right to be quirky. Just have someone else read your essay to make sure that you're coming across in the best possible way that you want to present yourself.
Okay, do we still have time?
Yeah, I have a couple minutes left.
Do you see any questions that maybe you haven't addressed in your presentation?
I want to give you the website for the financial aid, actually.
Yeah, I think it will be great.
Because there are quite a lot of questions on financial aid naturally. So I am going to give you the link here.
And while you're looking for that link, we had this session with Vlad just several months ago. Actually, it was a couple months ago. And we have a video recording, and Vlad, in his presentation, he's actually showing the whole application.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Doing his stuff, he's just giving it to you, which is like not so many students will do that.
That's so nice of him.
But Vlad is doing that because he really wanted to show how it looks like. So model, but you don't have to write in his way. He's a different person, but at least maybe before you start filling out this application, you can just look at some examples. Yeah, so this is a website.
So this is for the financial aid. And then if you want to come to some of our upcoming events and you want to try different things and meet different students, perhaps we have a visit us link here as well. Someone says, if we choose to work off campus, do we communicate in English? Yeah, I would say for the most part. So the working language of Singapore is English, and most students end up finding jobs in places, that conduct business in English. It will be rare, I think, for an undergraduate, an international undergraduate, to end up in an environment where they don't speak English.
Do you offer any Chinese language classes?
Yes, we do. Yes, we do,
That's good.
definitely. Yeah, so students can take Mandarin lessons with, so it depends on your level of proficiency. So if you already have some proficiency, it's possible to take fairly intermediate to advanced classes with our Chinese or Mandarin, language tutors, and take classes also at NUS. But then for those who are trying to pick up a new language, we do also offer peer tutoring and foreign language classes at the beginner's level.
And I think that this can be the last question. So students are asking, like, I have extracurricular activity in like acting,
Yeah.
but I want to apply for computer science. Is it okay? It's not okay. And maybe you can just answer in a way that it relates to this liberal arts education.
Yeah, okay, I see. So you want to apply, like you have a background in acting, you want to apply to computer science. And yeah, that's I think that's exactly what we're looking for in a student. We're looking for people who are interested in delving into the interdisciplinary elements of our education, right? They want to make connections between different subjects and different disciplines. So these are not mutually exclusive things, right? Your love for acting or music does not mean that you will not be a great computer scientist. In fact, we would argue probably make you a better computer scientist. And we're looking for students who really want to make those connections across the different disciplines, like from the sciences to the humanities, people who believe and understand the value of writing and critical thinking and how that can contribute to scientific inquiry, and the other way around as well. Yeah, so that's a great question. And yes, it absolutely is all right and highly encouraged.
And I think we can just finish our seminar. And we had
Okay.
great questions, and thank you a lot for answering all these questions. And this presentation was really interactive, and I see that students learned a lot. And
Yeah, I had a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun, and people sending messages is really nice.
yeah. And we had kids from
Okay.
different countries, which is great. Thank you a lot. This video will be uploaded to our YouTube channel, maybe in a couple of days. So,
Sure.
yeah.
Well, take care, everybody. Thank you so much for organizing this evening. I had a lot of fun. If you have any questions, please feel free to drop us an email and hit us up on YouTube as well. Yeah.
Yeah, great.
All right. Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Good night.
Good night.
Bye.